What if I told you that a $300,000 house actually costs you closer to $600,000? That's not a typo. And no, I'm not talking about property taxes or repairs. I'm talking about your mortgage. Here's the thing that took me way too long to figure out. When you buy a house with a mortgage, you're not just paying back what you borrowed. You're paying back what you borrowed plus a whole lot of interest. And by a whole lot, I mean you could literally buy a second house with what you're paying in interest alone. Let's walk through this together, because once you see how it works, you'll never look at a mortgage the same way again. So let's say you found a house you love. It costs $300,000. You've saved up a down payment of $60,000, which is 20%. Nice work, by the way. That means you need to borrow $240,000 from the bank. The bank says, sure, we'll lend you that money. But here's the deal. You're going to pay us back over 30 years and we're going to charge you interest. Let's say your interest rate is 7%. That's pretty typical these days. Now, your monthly payment comes out to around $1,600. Okay, that sounds manageable. You can budget for that. But here's where it gets wild. If you pay $1,600 every month for 30 years, how much money does that add up to? Let's do the math. $1,600 times 12 months is $19,200 per year. Multiply that by 30 years and you get $576,000. Wait, what? You borrowed $240,000. You're paying back $576,000. That means you're paying $336,000 just in interest. That's more than the house cost in the first place. When I first learned this, I genuinely thought I was reading it wrong. I checked the math 3 times. But nope, that's how mortgages work. So why does this happen? It comes down to how banks structure your payments. And this is the part that really got me. You'd think that when you make a mortgage payment, it's split evenly between paying down your loan and paying interest. Like half goes to one, half goes to the other. That would make sense, right? But that's not how it works. Not even close. In the early years of your mortgage, almost all of your payment goes toward interest. I'm talking like 80% or more. Only a tiny sliver actually reduces what you owe. Using that same example, in your very first month, out of that $1,600 payment, around $1,400 goes straight to the bank as interest. Only about $200 actually chips away at your loan balance. $200 out of $1,600, that's it. So after making your first payment, you still owe $239,800. You've barely made a dent. This happens because of something called amortization, which is just a fancy word for the way your loan payments are calculated. Basically, the bank figures out what you owe them in interest each month based on your remaining balance. Since your balance is huge at the beginning, your interest charges are huge too. Think of it like this. Imagine you owe your friend $100 and they charge you 10% interest per month. That first month, you owe them $10 in interest. If you only pay $15, $5 goes toward what you actually borrowed, and $10 is just the interest. Next month, you owe $95, so the interest is $9.50. It's still mostly interest, but it's getting a little better. Now stretch that over 30 years and hundreds of thousands of dollars, and you start to see how the bank makes so much money off your mortgage. Here's another way to think about it. For roughly the first 10 years of a 30-year mortgage, you're mostly just paying rent to the bank. You're building hardly any equity. Equity is just the portion of the house you actually own. If you sell your house after 5 years, you might be shocked at how little of it is actually yours. Let's say you've been paying that $1,600 a month for 5 years. You've paid in about $96,000, but your loan balance has only gone down by about $20,000. The other $76,000? That went to the bank as interest. I know, it feels unfair, and honestly, it kind of is. But here's the thing. Now that you know this, you can actually do something about it. Option 1 is to get a shorter loan term. Instead of a 30-year mortgage, you could get a 15-year mortgage. Your monthly payment will be higher, obviously. For that same $240,000 loan at 7%, you'd pay around $2,150 a month instead of $1,600. But here's the trade-off. Over 15 years, you'd pay a total of around $387,000. Compare that to $576,000 over 30 years. You'd save nearly $190,000 in interest. That's a car. That's a kid's college tuition. That's a really nice boat if that's your thing. The catch is that higher monthly payment might be tough to swing, so this isn't for everyone. But if you can afford it, a 15-year mortgage is one of the best financial moves you can make. Option 2 is to make extra payments on your 30-year mortgage. Even small amounts can make a huge difference. Let's say you pay an extra $100 per month toward your loan principal. That's the amount you actually borrowed, not the interest. Over 30 years, that extra $100 a month could save you around $50,000 in interest and help you pay off your house almost 5 years early. If you can swing an extra $200 a month, you're looking at saving close to $85,000 and paying off your mortgage about 8 years ahead of schedule. The key is that extra payment has to go toward the principal. When you send extra money, make sure you tell your lender that's where you want it applied. Otherwise, they might just put it toward next month's regular payment, which doesn't help you the same way. Option 3 is refinancing, which is when you replace your current mortgage with a new one. If interest rates drop significantly, refinancing can save you a lot of money. But be careful. Refinancing comes with its own costs, and if you're starting a new 30-year term, you might end up resetting that whole interest-heavy cycle we just talked about. Now, here's where I want to add some nuance, because this video isn't called "Mortgages Are Evil and You Should Never Get One." For most people, a mortgage is the only realistic way to buy a home, and owning a home can be a great thing. You're building equity instead of making a landlord rich. You have stability. You can paint the walls whatever weird color you want. The point isn't to scare you away from buying a house. The point is to understand what you're actually agreeing to. Because when you walk into a bank and they tell you your monthly payment is $1,600, that sounds doable. What they don't always make clear is that you're signing up to pay $576,000 over the life of the loan. Armed with this information, you can make smarter choices. Maybe you buy a slightly cheaper house so you can afford the 15-year payment. Maybe you commit to putting your tax refund toward your principal every year. Maybe you just go in with your eyes open, knowing what the trade-offs are. So, what should you actually do with this information? First, if you're shopping for a mortgage, ask the lender for the total cost of the loan, not just the monthly payment. They're required to give you this in something called the loan estimate document. Look at that total number. Let it sink in. Then decide if you're comfortable with it. Second, use an online mortgage calculator to play with different scenarios. See what happens if you put down a bigger down payment. See how a 15-year term compares to a 30-year term. See how much extra payments could save you. These calculators are free and they're everywhere. Third, if you already have a mortgage, consider whether extra payments make sense for you. Even $50 a month can add up over time, and every extra dollar you put toward the principal is a dollar you're not paying interest on. Look, nobody sits us down and explains this stuff before we sign on the dotted line. We're just supposed to figure it out somehow. And then we wonder why so many people end up house poor, with a beautiful home and nothing left over at the end of the month. The mortgage system isn't going to change anytime soon. But how you navigate it? That's entirely up to you. If this helped you see mortgages a little differently, consider subscribing to Like Your 5. We break down money stuff that nobody taught us, one topic at a time. And hey, share this with someone who's thinking about buying a house. They'll thank you later, or they'll be mildly horrified. Either way, at least they'll know.